Psychology of people who are drawn to minimalism: you walk into someone's home and it's full of stuff. Decorations on every shelf, pictures covering every wall, furniture pushed into every corner. And instead of feeling warm or cozy, you feel something tighten in your chest. A quiet but unmistakable urge to leave. Then you walk into a room with almost nothing in it. Clean surfaces, one plant, natural light, and something in your body just exhales. You've never been able to fully explain that to people. They look at your apartment and call it cold. They ask if you just moved in. They joke that you must be hiding something because no one actually lives like this. And you smile, but inside you're thinking, this is the only place I can breathe. You don't collect things. You don't hold on to gifts you don't need out of obligation. You throw away mail the same day it arrives. And when your space starts to fill up, it doesn't just bother you aesthetically, it bothers you emotionally. Like something inside you is being slowly pressed on. People think minimalism is a design preference, a Pinterest aesthetic, something you picked up from a documentary. But for you, it never felt like a trend. It felt like a requirement, like your mind was quietly telling you, long before you had language for it, that less is the only way you function at full capacity. This isn't about being cold or detached. It isn't about being superior or showing off restraint. Something real is happening inside your nervous system, and once you understand it, everything starts to make sense. Here's what most people never tell you. The desire for minimalism isn't a personality quirk. It isn't anxious perfectionism or a fear of commitment dressed up as an aesthetic. For a specific type of person, it is a deeply intelligent response to the way their brain processes the world. Society is built around accumulation. More money, more things, more experiences, more followers, more obligations. Fullness is treated as success. And people who quietly resist that, people who feel better with empty countertops than full ones, get labeled as odd, distant, or difficult to read. But here's the reframe you actually need. You weren't built for noise. You were built for depth. And minimalism, whether in your space, your schedule, your relationships, or your conversations, is how you protect the cognitive and emotional resources you need to actually function at your best. It was never about what you were getting rid of. It was always about what you were making room for. Your nervous system has a threshold. Everyone does, but not everyone's threshold is the same. For people drawn to minimalism, that threshold tends to be lower. Not in a weakness sense, but in a sensitivity sense. Your brain registers environmental input more deeply than average. The number of objects in a room, the visual complexity of a space, the ambient noise of a cluttered environment, your nervous system picks all of that up and begins processing it, whether you asked it to or not. This is connected to something called sensory processing sensitivity. It's a trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population, and it means your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making attention and emotional regulation, is working harder in stimulating environments than most people's is. You aren't imagining that a messy room makes it harder to think. Neurologically, it genuinely does. There's also a dopamine piece here. Research suggests that highly sensitive, introspective people often have a more reactive dopamine system, meaning they reach a sense of reward and stimulation more quickly, and also reach overwhelm more quickly. Where some people need more input to feel engaged, you need less. A conversation with real substance satisfies you more than a room full of small talk. A single meaningful object means more to you than a shelf of decorative ones. What this means in practical terms is that clutter, physical, social, mental, isn't just visually unpleasant to you, it's neurologically expensive. Every unnecessary object in your field of vision is a small tax on your attention. Every obligation you don't actually care about drains resources you could be using for things that matter. Minimalism, for your brain type, is not deprivation. It is conservation. It is how you stay resourced enough to actually be present in your own life. But there's a layer underneath, the neuroscience that doesn't get talked about enough, because for many people drawn to minimalism, the relationship with simplicity didn't start with a book or a documentary. It started with feeling overwhelmed in environments or relationships where there was simply too much happening, too much emotion, too much expectation, too much noise, and not enough space to process any of it. Maybe you grew up in a home that felt chaotic. Maybe you spent years in relationships or friendships that demanded more than they gave. Maybe you experienced a version of burnout that nobody around you fully understood, because from the outside you looked fine, and at some point your system learned to associate emptiness, real, physical, spacious emptiness, with safety. The clean room became the place where you could hear yourself think, where you could feel your own feelings without interference, where the only things present were things you had consciously chosen. And there is something quietly profound about that, about a person who has learned, often through real emotional cost, that their inner world needs room to exist, that they cannot pour from a space that has been crowded out. So here is the question worth sitting with. When you clear a space or simplify your life, what are you actually making room for? Because there is a difference between minimalism as a genuine act of self-awareness and minimalism as a way to avoid depth, to keep things so controlled and curated that nothing unexpected can touch. You both can look identical from the outside. Only you can tell the difference from the inside. If your simplicity is making you more present, more creative, more emotionally available to the things and people that genuinely matter, that is clarity. That is health. But if it has quietly become a way to keep even good things at a careful distance, that is worth being honest with yourself about. The goal was never an empty room. The goal was a full life that actually fits you. People who are drawn to minimalism are not people who feel nothing. They are, very often, people who feel everything and who have learned, consciously or not, to build environments that honor that. They have stopped pretending that quantity equals meaning. They have opted out of the exhausting performance of accumulation that most of the world is still caught inside. There is a particular kind of intelligence in knowing what you don't need, in being able to sit in a quiet room and feel at peace rather than restless, in choosing one deep friendship over 10 shallow ones, in understanding that your attention is finite and that where you place it is one of the most important decisions you make each day. You are not cold. You are not empty. You are someone who has learned the difference between noise and signal, and who refuses to fill their life with anything that doesn't belong. There, if this felt like it was describing something you've never been able to put into words before, I'd really love to know. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the one area of your life where you feel the strongest pull towards simplicity? Is it your space, your schedule, your relationships, or something else entirely? If this resonated, subscribing helps more people who think like this actually find it. And if you want to keep going deeper, the next video is about why certain people feel more emotionally restored by solitude than by people, and what that's actually telling you about your nervous system.